Hi, my name is Lola Aneke and I welcome you to Speed Dial on Finding Help with Special Needs. Today I'll be talking to us about some basic tips you can use in assessing your child while you seek the assistance of a professional with a placement assessment. So in my last episode, one of my episodes, I talked to you about various skills that are required, foundational skills that are required for your child to be able to participate in a classroom or in an inclusive school. Now, assessment, I'm aware that there are different kinds of assessment. There's diagnostic assessment, there's the places assessment such as the VB-MAP and ABLS. We also have, as an educator or an inclusive educator, we also have standardized assessment, we have criterion reference assessment, we have non-reference assessment, we have informal and formal assessment, we have formative assessment, we also have summative assessment, and that's in the field of education and inclusive education. But today I'm not going to bore you with all of that. I just want to simply explain to you that assessment can be done informally by you as a parent also, so that you can begin to provide support for your child. Assessment simply put means that you are gathering information, you are gathering data about the skills that your child is successful with and the ones that your child is not successful with or at. Now, when you gather those information, you now go back and pick the weaknesses of your child and begin to provide support for your child. So the whole essence of this is to give you tips that could help you with assessing your child so that you can begin to provide support for your child. Remember in the episode where I talked about some skills, foundational skills, I talked about skills such as attending skills, I talked about receptive skills, expressive skills, social self-help skills, social skills, pre-academic skills. Now I'm going to be explaining the few tips to you right now about some assessment you can conduct by yourself, and I see this as an informal assessment. You're just gathering information so that you can help your child. The first thing you need to find out, and I'm going to use an example. Let me take an example of a pre-academic skill, which would be identification of colors, or let's take identification of body parts. Now that is one skill that most parents find out. Oh, my child, touch your head, touch your shoulder, knees, toes, your nose, your mouth, head, shoulder, knees and toes, and eyes and ears and mouth and nose. That's one common pre-academic skills that we find that a lot of kids, a lot of parents want their kids to be aware of. So the first skill I want to share with you today is that you must ensure that your child can demonstrate all skills and instruction upon when you ask the child to do it. So one of the assessment tips I'm sharing with you today is that the child must be able to demonstrate the skill upon instruction. So for example, you could ask your child, Kemi, touch your eye, and your child is staring at you. You give the child a few time to process the instruction and it's still not touching his or her eye. You might want to check that. That might be a red flag, and that might also help you understand that this child needs help with this skill. Okay, so the child must be able to demonstrate the skill upon instruction. When you ask him to do the skill, when you give him an instruction, he must be able to do it when you ask him and not later on. We've seen some kids, because of echolalia, when you tell them to do some things, they might not do it at that moment. Maybe hours later or a few minutes later, they now start showing you. So sometimes people say to us that, oh, my child can do this, but he will not do it when you want him to do it. If the child is not doing the instruction you've given up to him to perform at that moment upon instruction, it's a red flag that he needs to acquire more skills to succeed in that aspect. The second way of assessing is that you must ensure that the child can demonstrate the skill without assistance. You know how I talked to you about prompts, where you can provide support to the child to ensure that the child is successful at that skill. So you want to be sure that the child can demonstrate the knowledge of the skill without assistance. The third way you can assess your child is that you want to be sure that the child can demonstrate the skill over time. So for example, when you say touch your nose, and the child is able to touch it. In another at another time, you say touch your nose, and the child is able to touch it. That means the child is able to demonstrate the skill over time. And you could place the objective to be, this child would have to touch his nose 8 out of 10 trials. And once that child is able to demonstrate the knowledge of that skill 8 times, then you can tell that this child can demonstrate the skill over time. But if the child is having challenges with that, then you know that you have to help the child. You have to provide more support and intervention in that area. Another way you can assess your child, another skill, another tip I'll be sharing with you today, is the child must be able to demonstrate the skills across people, across places, across context. So that's more like generalization. If you ask your child to touch his nose with you, when you ask the child to touch his nose with his father, he must be able to. When you ask the child to touch his nose with his grandmother, in the house, on the field, anywhere you are, the child must be able to touch his nose. If this child is struggling in this aspect, then you know that you have to provide intervention. You have to take note of that deficit and provide intervention and more support for that child. The last way you can assess your child is that you want to be sure that the child can demonstrate all components of that skill you ask the child to demonstrate to you. So for example, I want a child to demonstrate body part, and I say touch your head, touch your shoulder, touch your knees, touch your toes, touch your eyes, nose, mouth, ears. If the child is not able to demonstrate all of that skill, then it means that the child needs support, and you have to provide a lot of support to ensure that the child can demonstrate all of the skills. So like I always do, I would recap all that I've said to you today. You can perform some form of informal assessment with your child as a parent while you wait for a formal diagnosis or a professional placement assessment. And the first thing that I advise that you do is to ensure that the child can perform the skills upon instruction. When you give an instruction, at that moment the child must be able to perform the instruction. Secondly, the child must be able to perform or demonstrate that the knowledge of that skill without assistance. Thirdly, the child must be able to demonstrate the knowledge of the skills over time. Fourthly, the child must be able to demonstrate the knowledge of the skill across people, across places, and across context, which is a way of generalizing that he knows the skill. And lastly, the child must be able to demonstrate the skill, all the components of the skills. I hope that these few tips I've taught to you and I've discussed with you about performing an assessment with your child has been helpful. Until I come your way again, I remain Lola Aneke. Stay blessed and have a good day. Bye-bye.